goal of this project is to see if we can build a jig to put t-shirts onto our flatbed UV printer and print them. We have a white kit on that unit, and it allows us to lay down ink at a very, very high coverage rate. So I'm really excited to work on it, and I hope you enjoy the video. I had some old metal shelving hanging around the shop that I decided to cut up to see if I could make a jig out of it. I used a metal scribe to scratch the steel so I could get a line to follow with the angle grinder and a cutting blade. And then basically you just run the blade along the line that you made. Once I'd cut the metal shelf off, I noticed that the sides of it were going to be too high for the material that I planned on putting underneath it to prop up the t-shirt. So I cut the sides of the shelf down to about a 1/2 inch. And you can see here that I'm just ripping along with the cutting tool. They're incredibly fantastic at cutting, and they just zip through the metal. I used 120 grit sandpaper to knock down the sharp edges and burrs from the cutting tool, and I just took my time and whizzed along. It turned out really, really well. There's not much to it. The sander's not it's an older unit, and it's got some pretty bad scars from having been abused over the years, but it seems to work fine, and the 120 seemed to be about the right grit to get the job done. I was walking through Home Depot one day, and I found a shelf that had a bunch of high density foam in smaller pieces on it, and I picked a few up to experiment with. The stuff is really unique, and it's very shapeable. You can sand it, you can cut it. It's really neat stuff. I think it's a DuPont product. I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's fairly easy to find. The goal now was to sand down the outside areas of the foam so that there would be a high spot for the shirt to be held up to the same height as the metal, so that we could get the printer as close as humanly possible to the t-shirt material to get a high quality print. I used 600 grit wet dry sandpaper to start with, and it was painful. It was really, really slow. So I actually ended up going back to the 120 grit. I think I tried 220, and then I actually went back to 120, and 120 seemed to rip through the stuff. I don't recommend sanding without a mouth guard or a respirator, and to be honest with you, pink was coming out of my nose as I blew it for the next couple hours after this project, so I don't recommend doing that. At this point, I'm just checking to see if I've managed to shave off enough material to raise the inside section up high enough to get the t-shirts to the correct height that we want to be at, which is basically the exact same height as the metal on the outside of the jig. found this heat press on local Craigslist for about, I think it was $300. I think I paid too much for it, to be honest. It's a cheap Chinese one, knockoff swing away, and it worked fine, but I've since seen them for a lot cheaper. Once I'd made the jig, I handed the project over to Richard, who then had to measure everything out and figure out exactly how he was going to get this printed. Did I mention that I had to pre-treat the t-shirt with a pre-treatment that I'd purchased from a company called All Graphic Supplies? I think I paid $60 for the bottle. It was a bit expensive, but I'm sure it'll be just great. So basically you spray the material down, throw down a piece of parchment paper on top of it once it's been wetted in the area that you're going to print on, and then you apply heat and dry the product out. And then again, it was time to get the t-shirt to get it on top of the jig. Watching the t-shirt run through the printer gave me a few different ideas on how to improve the jig, and I'm going to definitely go back to the drawing board and make a new one. Overall, I'm really impressed on our first try with this setup, and definitely have some ideas on how I'm going to improve it. Now you can see in this video that I'm just doing what's called post-curing or post-heating of the UV ink on the t-shirt, and I was using a wax paper when I should be using a more parchment paper, so it darkened up the image a little bit. I don't think it did any favors, so I've got the right product now in a parchment paper, and yeah, stay tuned for part 2, and we're going to see if we can improve on the processes. There we go. Should be dry now.